Hello and welcome back to another video. Today here again on Forza Horizon 5 to take a look at not one but two new additions to this game, the two new GMCs, the GMC Syclone and the Typhoon. Whilst these two vehicles are new additions to this game, they're not new to Forza, being recycled from previous titles, last being seen in Horizon 4, where they were also added as part of the playlist. But partly because it's been a while since we've been able to drive them in that game, and partly because there's two of them, I thought it was worth revisiting these. The Typhoon you can obtain by getting 20 points in this week's festival playlist in winter, and the Syclone you could obtain the same way the week before, but that one is unfortunately no longer available now if you haven't already got it. These two are essentially the pickup and SUV version of the same vehicle, with the Syclone being based on the Sonoma truck and the Typhoon based on the very similar GMC Jimmy at the time, and I think those two vehicles shared a platform before these came along, being the base version pickup and SUV. Both of these vehicles produce 280 horsepower from the same 4.3 litre V6 engine, which is unusual for an American vehicle not to be 8 cylinders. They are, of course, both all-wheel drive. However, the Typhoon is slightly heavier with that back section on it rather than being an open pickup truck at 1,724 kilos to the Syclone's 1,639, making the Syclone 10 psi higher here in Forza at 548 rather than 538. Both then start somewhere in the middle of C-Class. Neither of them have that many options in the way of customization and upgrades. The Syclone only has one manufacturer colour, for example. And no interesting visual mods, only Forza Aero at the front and rear, which looks pretty horrendous. It does, however, have a few engine swaps. It has, I believe, 4 V8s, a 6.2, a 6.7, a racing 7.2, and a 7.4 twin turbo, and there's also a V10 and inline 6 option. The Typhoon, though, does have a few more painting options than the Syclone, so there's some very interesting manufacturer colours, most of them two-tone. There's the red that we have on it at the moment, there's the green with the white, there's the sort of tealy blue turquoise colour with the silver, the blue with the white, my personal favourite, the purple, of course, which I'm probably going to put on this, the black with the silver, and the white with the silver. So I'm going to apply the purple, and as for the painting groups, you can imagine which bits are which based on the silver that I showed you in those colours. In terms of upgrades, though, I think it's pretty much identical. It's got the same Forza Aero options as your only options, and exactly the same selection of engine swaps, the same V8s, V10 and inline 6. In terms of the other options, it's pretty much as you would expect. I think you can twin turbo it, but I'm not sure why you would, or rear wheel drive swap it. But other than that, is exactly what you'd expect. Front tyres, for some reason, you can change the profile of, but not the rears. But yeah, there's nothing exciting or new for either of these. So in Horizon 4, both of these vehicles were pretty good in B-Class, but also not too bad in A-Class, but I think they were slightly better in B. So I'm going to put some K1Z barred B-Class tunes on both of them, and then we're going to take them into some online open racing, starting with the Typhoon, putting this tune on, which ups the power to 397 horsepower and drops the weight to 1,357 kilos on street tyres, in keeping the all-wheel drive drivetrain. The first race was at the Reservorio Sprint, where I started in second somehow. This race started well for the two Typhoons, immediately getting into the top 2 places. However, as the race went on, things went downhill. Elf pulled away in the other Typhoon, and eventually a Mitsubishi Starion went all the way around the outside in a pretty incredible overtake, actually, and Yobbo got past me in an ancient BMW, so it was eventually a 4th place finish. Next up was the Plaza Circuit, where I started back in 8th, and then forgot how bad the brakes were, hit a wall, and got a slowdown for having hit that wall, which put me in last. I did eventually get past a Ford Escort Wind car, a Honda Civic, and an Audi Estate, though, finishing up in 5th place, even worse than the first race then. Finally, we went to the Junas Blancas Sprint, where I started all the way back in 11th, with the other Typhoon in last. Both initially launched well, although Elf was slightly faster using manual with clutch, both of them having the same tune applied. We both then put in a wall through one of the fast corners early on, which didn't help, and I then kept on crashing into walls until I eventually actually caught up to a Nissan that hit the shed of death on the corner, and outdragged the Audi estate in the front of the spinach line. Although that had been a full set of 3 races, I felt like I'd only just got used to driving this truck, so I decided to use the Typhoon for a second set of races before moving over to the Syclone. This started at the very tight Bola Ocho circuit, which was quite worrying. However, it went rather better than I expected, with another 4th place finish, which isn't the best, but wasn't too bad, considering where it finished in the first adventure. Next was the Copper Canyon sprint, starting behind an hideous X6. There was then many bumpings throughout the deadly section, with my Typhoon somehow ending up in the lead of the race. Not really sure how that happened. This was quite short-lived though. Elf got the run in the other one of these. Again, manual with clutch helping there, but also getting a better line through the corner despite me bumping into him, and went past, and then so did a Galant. Then Yobbo got past in the Swedish box as well. I did, though, eventually pass the Galant again, getting my first podium, finally, for the Typhoon. Elf, though, won the race in the other Typhoon with the same tune applied, so it can't be too bad, although I don't really know what that says about my driving. But anyway, finally we went to the Emerald circuit, which Forza very kindly gave me pole position on. I then got overtaken by a Civic, hit a wall, got to slow down, ended up 3 wide past the Death Pebbles, and then hit another wall. After this, I found myself in 4th place, where I stayed until the end of the race. So I didn't get on brilliantly with the Typhoon, at least to start with. I did settle into it a bit and it felt reasonable, but not fast like some things I've driven. So anyway, let's go and put a similar tune on the Syclone. This one only has 358 horsepower rather than the 397 that the Typhoon had, but it does weigh only 1,281 kilos, so potentially it might feel a little bit better to drive, also on street tyres, and also retaining all-wheel drive. On this one though, I'm going to apply some Go Faster Flames in the hope that this makes it better than the other one. The first race in the Syclone was the Riviera Sprint, where I started second, immediately proceeding to be winning off the line. Then a Toyota Sushi delivery car decided to kill me into the other GMC, which I sort of ended up pushing into a wall, and ended up in first again after all of that chaos somehow. A Camaro then overtook me on the straight with much more power and speed, and eventually so did a Ford Lightning, which was very, very frightening, which meant I finished in 3rd place, still better than my first race in the other GMC though. At this point I did think that this felt slightly better than that Typhoon that we had driven previously. Next up though was the Sansar Dorado sprint, where I pretty quickly got into 3rd place, and could have gotten second on the front to the finish line, but I instead decided to run into the back of a Datsun, so I finished 3rd. Again, but another podium, so not too bad. Finally we went to the Chihuahua circuit, where I started last, but somehow got into 4th by the end of lap 1, where I again found myself behind the Datsun, which I did overtake, then got overtaken by, and found myself behind it again. I again found myself getting a good run in another front to the spinach line, where I again decided to run into the back of it, and again finished 3rd, which meant in all 3 races in that adventure I got the same result. But 3 third place finishes is not too bad, quite a bit better than the Typhoon did in those other adventures. As I had taken the Typhoon into a second set though, I thought it was only fair to do another set of races in the Syclone as well, starting at the Horizon Mexico circuit, where I started in 3rd place and immediately found myself winning, and somehow stayed winning during the first lap, and during the second lap, and during the 3rd lap, and eventually actually won the race. Not really sure how, so the Syclone then seems somewhat better than the Typhoon, actually taking a victory, and all podiums in the first adventure as well. Next up was the Llanuras sprint, where I started at the back, gradually overtook a few things, and eventually found myself finishing in 5th place, so not quite so good after that better start previously. Finally we found ourselves at the Los Jardines circuit, where I started in 4th place, and then quickly got into 2nd place, and then promptly missed a checkpoint, putting me in 9th. I got a couple of places back, but eventually only finished in 7th, and that was that, really. Which is going to bring an end to today's video, taking a very first look at the 2 new GMCs here in Forza Horizon 5. It is great to have these 2 rather interesting vehicles back, a very different sort of truck and SUV to the sort of thing we got in the truck month recently. I still think that cars that are from previous games that have been recycled into this and added post-launch shouldn't be exclusive prize vehicles and should be in the game from the start, but nevertheless it's good to see these 2 finally return. Of course, stock, they're pretty slow, by today's standards at least, but for the size and age of these 2, it's really not that bad. 2 big, heavy things from the 90s going that fast is pretty incredible, really. Neither of them have many options, but the Typhoon here has an excellent manufacturer purple colour and some cool paint group options, but that is about the extent of it. When upgraded with a B-Class tune, they both seem pretty decent, and had some good fun in B-Class open racing there, but probably not going to win all that much, certainly not with me driving anyway. Having said that, the Syclone was slightly better than the Typhoon, I think down to its slightly lower weight, and did in fact get a victory and several podiums in the 2 adventures it took part in. So I think I'll keep the Syclone tuned for racing, because it is quite a fun thing to use, even if it's not the fastest thing out there, and just make the Typhoon into a nice vehicle for just driving, basically, retaining this stunning purple paint colour that it has applied. That, though, is going to be all for a first look at these 2 new vehicles, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with the next video very soon.